Democracy Spring. Every day, every day I wake, I want to know, is this the day? Is this the day democracy blossoms? Is this when the earth resounds through the voice of the people and everyone comes to her breast? This closed fist in the darkness, this tight throat we have known is not all there is. I know the pulse of a living thing. I can feel a season turning in my bones. Every morning I rise to meet the sunlight as it rallies us. Every hour I ask, how shall I grow from this my soil? What yellows, what purples murmur, what sap flows, what flames will rise to meet the others in the garden, in the forest where we now breathe. Oh, people. Oh, people, is there anything else to want, any other desire to consume us than this longing to lift and find ourselves in the daylight, waving victory flags, singing triumph songs? Every day I wake, I want to know, is this the day? Is this the day democracy blossoms? Is this where democracy springs?
You're on mute.
Thank you to our resident poet, Susan Windle. Hi, I'm Gloria Gilman. I'm the chair of Philly Neighborhood Networks. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for our annual All Hands Members Meeting, which we are conducting virtually this year for your convenience. You may remember last year's theme for our meeting was Saving Democracy. I'm happy to report that democracy has survived another year. Of course, we know that those who would sweep our democracy into the dustbin of history are still roaming the halls of Congress, and we will be intent on not letting down our guard. But we must also attend to pressing issues here at home. 2022 was a busy year in politics, and Philly Neighborhood Networks did our part to elect officials who shared our values, and we look forward to working with them on key issues. Locally, PNN expanded our advocacy to prison justice and our electoral reach to new areas of the city. Today, you'll see all the great work and the events that we engaged in this past year, and you'll find out what's on the horizon for this coming year. You'll hear from two of our political allies. You'll meet some of our great activists and team members, and you'll find out how you can get involved. Now, I'm happy to introduce our keynote speaker for our meeting, Helen Gim. Helen has been a friend and ally even before she won her first election for city council back in 2015. Helen is a former school teacher and community organizer who co-founded Parents United for Public Education and served on the board of Asian Americans United. While on city council, she served as a progressive voice and leader, achieving successes on many issues, including housing, education, youth issues, and workers' rights. Helen has received the White House's Cesar Chavez Champions of Change Award. She was recognized as one of Philadelphia Magazine's 75 most influential people in the city, and she was named the Philadelphia Inquirer Citizen of the Year. Now she is running for mayor of our city. And after we did an extensive interview with her, following our membership vote, I am pleased to announce that we have endorsed Helen Gim for mayor. If you have questions for Helen, please put them in the chat. Now, to share her vision and priorities for Philadelphia, please welcome, hopefully, our next mayor, Helen Gim.
Well, we're gonna make it happen, Gloria. And thank you everybody for having me on. I wore my Eagles stuff, so apologies that I'm a little bit, I think I've had 3 hours of sleep or 8 hours of sleep in the last 3 nights. So I've been like doing West Coast traveling, all of that. But it is an absolute pleasure to be before Neighborhood Networks as your candidate for mayor. 8 years ago, I came before Neighborhood Networks sharing a story about a city that had to turn itself around. And actually, Neighborhood Networks was my very first interview for city council. And you asked me then what my path to victory was. This was largely before the major successes of the progressive wave, but there was us. There was us in 25 years of work that we had done together to reclaim the very things that every Philadelphian wants and needs. A decent school to send your children to, a neighborhood to raise a family in, an affordable home where we can age gracefully, justice that keeps us safe, and a decent union job and economic opportunity for ordinary people. And I promised you then, as I do today, my campaign would not just be about building a stronger, more just Philadelphia. It would be about building a stronger movement with the capacity and energy to keep winning. I had spent my life as a teacher, an organizer, a policymaker. You had read about my work if you didn't know my name. I took on tough challenges, things that often were told to all of us that would be impossible. And together we made change with a specific focus on actually improving people's lives. Neighborhood Networks 8 years ago helped me get elected to city council in an unlikely race, and we haven't stopped working together and winning together ever since. And so when I got onto city council, I wanted to make sure that we delivered on an agenda that we had promised would be different from so much of what we had seen before. We helped lead the end of that 17-year state takeover of our public schools, gave nurses and counselors, social workers, arts, music, clean water, and internet access to every child. We rejected the austerity agenda that had defined education in the city of Philadelphia for almost 20 years. And now we're on a mission together to truly invest in our public schools, to restore them back to the center of neighborhood and community, to make them an honorable partner with families to help heal and bring a restorative vision for our young people who are struggling right now. But we're also on a mission to modernize every single public school, which can bring jobs and educational opportunities, which will help grow our city and assure that those who are here to stay, that their children and families will be cared for. In a $7.25 an hour state, we stood with labor and emerging unions to reinvigorate a new labor movement. We passed the nation's most expansive Fair Workweek law to give stable work schedules to every big retail, restaurant, and hotel worker, mostly Black and brown. And I want to be clear, we did this when the numbers on city council weren't on our side. There was no definitive, if you were to look at where we were at the beginning of that campaign, we weren't in any position to necessarily win. But what we did was we continued that organizing mission, and we went out and we changed the landscape for 130,000 hourly workers. And I will keep fighting to bring quality paying jobs, economic opportunity funds for small businesses, and a real attention to growing economic prosperity for Black, brown, and immigrant communities in all parts of our city. I prioritize affordability in Philadelphia by reforming the 10-year tax abatement and built the most successful housing program in the country, saving tens of thousands of people from being evicted from their homes. This program, the eviction diversion program, is now copied in 180 cities and counties in 36 states and was just included as a corner piece of the White House's National Renter Bill of Rights that was released this week. And it was included for one major reason, because it works. And it started right here. And now I'm here to grow Philadelphia in a way that doesn't threaten longtime residents, but helps grow the tax base and our population so our city can have the revenue and deliver the services our residents demand and deserve, and protect our elders and longtime residents from the gentrification and developer-driven model that has driven away so many families. But I will also be honest with you. As much as we have done together, we're standing before you I'm standing before you for mayor because the biggest task is actually at hand. The violence that is destroying our city and our people is the greatest threat to everything we have ever built, all that we believe in, and anything we can dream for the future. It pits communities against one another, and it keeps this city and far too many of its neighborhoods from being everything that they can be and what they must be. I spent my life trying to save this city and our young people, and I never needed a title to do it. And I'm running for mayor to take the bold action now that's necessary to bring back our city and especially our young people from the violence that threatens every part of our lives and from a reactionary form of politics that threatens to drag back and reverse so many different causes of justice that all of us have been a part of. Philadelphia needs a proven fighter to protect the city that we call home. I've been very clear that on my very first day, I'm going to declare a state of emergency and focus all of our city departments towards a common goal of community safety. Every Monday we'll begin with a cabinet meeting where every department head will report what they're doing to improve safety in our communities. And we're focusing specifically on illegal guns, on interventions for those who are in the path of violence, and support for victims. I'll convene the district attorney, the heads of the school district, SEPTA, PHA, and state and federal law enforcement to make sure that we are helping those who are most at risk before they harm themselves or others. And I'm very clear that the mayor is responsible for the safety and well-being of all of its residents. The police and district attorney are on one end, yes, and under my watch, we are going to find ways that they are going to work together in unison. But the mayor controls the schools, housing, family services, help, and economic opportunities that are supposed to identify problems and prevent crime, not just punish it. I've been very clear that I'm also appalled at how victims of crime are treated in this city. When we know that so many victims of crime are likely to become later people who may inflict harm upon others, and we are providing so few resources for them, we cannot continue on that trajectory. I will put victims first, supporting families and survivors so that the trauma and grief of this time is not perpetrated on another generation. Housing, mental health supports and services are essential to this cause, and we must stop allotting victim services based on prosecution and not on the trauma that victims actually experience. Less than 50% of crimes are ever even reported to the police. Those that may get reported, 20% may, or the overwhelming majority of non-fatal shootings don't even end in a clearance, an arrest, or a significant case or identification. That is why the victim first approach is a core part of an anti-violence strategy that has been largely neglected by all other candidates in the race and frankly by our city. My first 100 days is going to prioritize improving the clearance rate on homicides and 911 response times, because every death in the city is someone who matters. And when people call for help, they have to know that help is on the way. We're going to center mental health and trauma services all across Philadelphia. I started the first mobile mental health, non-policing mental health crisis response units. We're going to expand them and continue to remove barriers to treatment, bringing our eds and meds institutions to the table. And we will bring our young people back to us. We're going to bring our young people back to us and into a functioning society. We need a 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. approach to caring for our kids. We must activate every single civic and public asset, including rec centers and libraries. We must make parents part of the solution to keep our young people on track and let them know that this city's future is theirs. But I'll also say this. I refuse to have my campaign to be defined by the worst thing that is also happening to us. This is Philadelphia. We are also the second largest city on the East Coast, and we have to act like it. That means being a leader in business and culture and the arts and a Black Renaissance. That means growing our city with new immigrants and parents and families who stay here and come here for our schools and our affordability. That means harnessing the financial powers of the region with a visionary Philadelphia Public Financing Authority that can lead big banks and CDFIs and other lending and leveraging institutions in an all-out effort to lift up Black, brown, and disadvantaged businesses and rescue our city truly with the resources and means that are here locally. And it means centering our municipal workers. When 1 out of 7 positions in city government lays vacant and empty, we are going to have to restaff our municipal workforce and prove to voters and taxpayers that government is going to be the cavalry, that local government will be the cavalry that Harrisburg and DC have not been. I am not running for 2023. I am running for 2033 and a new vision for what this city has to become. We know that what we're facing off against in the next 3.5 months is an unprecedented amount of money and the traditional politics that Philadelphia has always brought to us. Career politicians, austerity bureaucrats, wealthy self-funders boosting polls and sneering at the basic functions and role of government and government workers who admit crisis have been weaponizing violence and fear to drag us back to a dark past that never worked and mass incarcerated and punished so many communities of color. So I'm not rolling the clock back on civil rights, and I will deliver a vision of safety rooted in a people-centered approach towards healing, restoration, and investment that actually does help us with safety and prevents crime. But most importantly, invest in the people, invest in all of us. That's what brought us together in the first place. We have a job to do. We have a test of our movement's strength and commitment and power right now in an unprecedented way. And in just around 2 weeks, petitions start with more than 10 candidates in the race, and we have to show everybody exactly what it is we can do. But 8 years ago, I came before Neighborhood Networks in my very first interview for a race for elected office that I hope could change the landscape of Philadelphia politics. And Neighborhood Networks 8 years ago put their faith in someone like myself. And we have the chance to do what hasn't been done in major American cities, lead a true people's movement forward for all of Philadelphia and for a more just city. Thank you.
Wow, thank you for those remarks, Helen. Now we will have a brief question and answer period. We're going to have Helen answer the questions in the chat. If she doesn't have time to answer all of them, you will receive the answers at a later time. So please put your questions there. Our chat monitor is Stan Shapiro, who will be asking those questions. So Stan, what's the first question?
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So the first question is, do you have a plan to improve and expand public transportation in Philadelphia?
Yeah, so, I'm putting the final touches on a transit-oriented plan. I mean, when I first ran in 2015, one of my platforms was this vision of the connected city, and that is both literal and figurative. It was meant to say that we have the bones of what can make Philadelphia truly connected, whether it's through our public transit system. I'm happy to do a little bit more of a deep dive. I don't know that I'll go into all of it together, but I am driven by equity. I was one of the people who made sure that SEPTA fares were free for children under 12, to eliminate the transfer fees, and we'll continue to look at investing locally because SEPTA's ridership is 80% within the boundaries of Philadelphia. But I'm also clear, we have to engage ridership. We need to clean it up. I'm very clear that safe routes to schools, one of the core parts of our safety plan, must include SEPTA, and that includes, we cannot have parents living in fear of their children traveling to and from. And we have major opportunities, at least in the next 2 years, to potentially expand transit, to look at what the opportunities are to reach out into areas that have not been done. We want to make sure that whatever plan that SEPTA is coming up with, that it's deeply equitable. I have a lot of concerns, and making sure that we're not just user-based, but we're needs-based on how we deliver transportation to all areas. So I'm happy to look forward to more conversations about that.
Terrific. Thank you so much on that one. Next question, a pair of members say, we want to thank you for voting for the creation of the Philadelphia Public Financing Authority, a precursor to a public bank. How do you see the authority and/or the bank fitting into your plan to build a more equitable, democratic, and an inclusive economy in the city?
Yeah, I think absolutely the vision of especially the Public Financing Authority, as I mentioned in some of my opening remarks. One of the biggest problems that we've got in Philadelphia, and one of the reasons why you need a different kind of mayor, is that much of Philadelphia government is completely siloed. So some of them, and they all govern essential services. So, you've got, on the financial front, you've got CDFIs, you've got, PIDC over here, you've got a Commerce Department doing I don't know what, you've got, big banks that are kind of controlling and leveraging things, but we contract with them. And so what we really need right now is some kind of, and I think this is, one of the roles of the Philadelphia Public Financial Authority is some kind of entity that is pulling these things together, leveraging in the big lending institutions and compelling us to do an all-out financial rescue and investment in the city, particularly around local and small businesses, with an eye towards justice, with an eye towards new opportunities, whether they be in climate infrastructure or school modernization. But this isn't going to happen if we kind of let things go on autopilot and the mayor's just like appointing people to random areas, but not really coalescing on a real investment agenda. I want us to have that vision. And I think that certainly the vision of the Philadelphia Public Financing Authority is a great model for what that can and has to look like.
Terrific. Thank you so much for that. Next question, should we have an elected school board like the rest of Pennsylvania?
So here's the thing. I spent a lot of time thinking about that question. I'm kind of not into the structural issues as much anymore. An elected school board with no taxing authority that cannot raise its own money is no more helpful to the problems of our school system than the one that we currently have. So, I am disgusted. I think that in the most ideal sense, it is an elected school board with taxing authority. Then yes, I would support that. But that would mean an independent and separate taxing authority from city council. And it would allow that school board to be held accountable to growing the revenues and making the case for why taxpayers should help fund increased investments in teacher growth and pipeline, in school modernization, and mental health supports, and a real investment in community schools. But we do not have that. And I do not believe we are going to get that in the next short term. And I absolutely cannot wait. Most of you know that I am actually, I'm running for mayor in large part because I cannot bear the state of our public school system. And I cannot afford to leave so many children and families behind, that I believe that our young people are at risk, that they're in danger, and that we are not looking out for them, and that there are no real institutions to be able to do that on the private front or on the charitable front. And our institutions have to leverage in and do it. I will be a strong mayor on education. I will bring and firmly believe that the superintendent does have to be a part of the mayor's cabinet, that the school district is accountable to the city, and the city is also accountable to the school district. That's why I talked about a 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. approach to taking care of kids. That's why I'm talking about year-round programming for schools, including in summertime. That's why I believe that the mayor has to help lead the school modernization agenda, because the school system simply cannot raise the funds that's necessary for a truly serious investment on new school buildings and school modernization that can anchor families and attract new ones to come here. And I am absolutely adamant about outcomes for our young people, that the quality of schooling must improve, including around literacy, including around graduation rates, including around engagement. And we have an important opportunity to do that right now. I don't think any other candidate in this race is going to have a schools plan other than one that just gives it lip service. And definitely nobody has the experience to be able to understand how the city and schools can merge together, or whether or not we must merge together in a common mission to uplift Philadelphia children and families.
Okay, we have time for one last question, and it's a little bit complex, but I know that you can be concise. So we're going to ask you, can you say something about your work on environmental justice?
Yes, of course. I mean, one of the most important things that we are looking at is a real, justice movement that takes environmental infrastructure movement that helps to take away sort of the slogans and put into reality what can functionally happen on a relatively short term that can engage labor partners so that we're not, at odds with all of that, and then create a real vision for rebuilding the city. Certainly my campaign for clean water in Philadelphia schools kickstarted a $500 million infrastructure investment that brought air conditioning, lead, asbestos, and mold removal, and new school buildings to a number of different schools. And we need to take that up to, 10,000%. When the EPA announced, or when the Supreme Court announced that the EPA can no longer monitor emissions in a city where, you see whole neighborhoods near questionably toxic entities, with extraordinarily high asthma rates among children, sicknesses and ailments. I'm going to activate our health department to be, to help monitor that. I see a bold role for city government to leverage in. There's so much that we can and have to do around building emissions, around new infrastructure, around making sure that Eastwick never floods again, that the Logan Triangle comes back to life as a vibrant place. But that is going to be local. This is not, there are opportunities at the federal level and at the state level, but the vision has to be at the local level.
Mhm. Terrific. Thank you so much, Helen. And I'm going to toss it back to Gloria.
One quick thing, Stan, just because I was a little bit curt and I don't want the individual to think that I don't know what the Commerce Department does. I absolutely know what the Commerce Department does, and I know what the Commerce Department needs to do. My comment was mainly that our Commerce Department has largely been a minor player, lacking in the kinds of visionary efforts that really need to invest in local businesses, and a vibrant local economy has largely been a liaison to large businesses and companies. But we need a much more vibrant Commerce Department. So I do know what that does. Don't worry, folks. I'm not running for mayor, not knowing what these institutions are.
Terrific. Okay, thanks. Gloria.
Yes, thanks, Helen and Stan, for that Q&A. Now, let's take a look at all the work that we've done in the last year as an organization on major issues facing our city and our nation. We'll also get the latest on what we plan to do this year. To help us do this, let me introduce our organizing director, Tim Brown. Tim?
Yeah, hi, folks. We may have ducked a bullet this time, this election, but let's be clear. The threat of fascism is ongoing, and our nation's future hangs in the balance. As a real patriots, we have an obligation to do all we can to defend our democracy. While the threat is national, the solution happens locally in every city, in every town in America, with grassroots organizations like Philly Neighborhood Networks, doing all we can to create a better future. We do that by dedicating some of our time to making a positive difference in our world. Now, last year was a busy year for us. We worked on important issues in housing, healthcare, education, the environment. We expanded our action committees to include prison justice, and there's a lot to cover. So I'll be sharing the privilege of telling you about our work with Elena Lynn. Elena is an activist, a history teacher, a current stay-at-home mom, and a member of our executive committee. Elena?
Thanks, Tim. So we're here to connect with our neighbors, to create change and build trust. And this community building is essential to healing our nation and our democracy. It can also help keep us inspired during difficult times. As the parent of 2 young children, I have been dealing with the viral onslaught this year. In January only, my family has had COVID, norovirus, and now a visit from our old friend, the common cold. I have been really grateful to my fellow Neighborhood Networks members. They thank me when I'm able to take part. They support me when other things get in the way. And I want to remind all of you here that we appreciate your participation whenever and however you are able. Even small bits of participation can make a big difference in Philly and can make a big difference in our own lives. So let's take a look now at how members of our action committees took on big issues in Philly this year. Nicole, please start us off.
Let me introduce myself again. Can you hear me now? Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Levy from the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition and PNN member. So we all know that public banking will play an important role leveling the playing field for aspiring businesses who can't get a loan because of their economic profile or the neighborhood they live in. By backing loans from small local banks, the Philly Public Bank will light up long abandoned communities with new economic growth, bringing money into the neighborhood, creating jobs, and democratizing our economy. In 2022, we moved so much closer to this goal. When we needed a supermajority from City Council to create a public financial authority, we blitzed council members with emails and phone calls, flooded their social media, calling on them to support a Philly public bank. When the vote was called, it passed 15-1. And when the mayor refused to fund the authority, we protested in front of his office to shame him, an action which was broadcast in the Inquirer, Billy Penn, and other news outlets. We held monthly public meetings with subject matter experts to educate and address ways that a public bank could improve the quality of life around the city. We also held our first People's Economic Forum, where experts discussed a broad range of opportunities that will be created in Philly once we get the funding for a public bank. We will continue to work for the day when Philly is the first city in the US with a public bank. We can't take our foot off the pedal now. In 2023, we plan to make appointing a governing board and funding our public bank a voting issue for the upcoming mayoral election. To set the stage for this work, we have invited mayoral aspirants to discuss their position on public banking and Philadelphia's financial future. In February, we are partnering with PACA to host our second People's Economic Forum to discuss all the ways that a public bank can support the co-op movement in our city. I hope you can join us in this work. Please take a moment before we close today's meeting to click on the link in the chat and let us know that you want to get involved. Over to you, John.
I'm John Thompson from Evidences Law Center and a member of PNN Executive Committee. Last year, PNN joined the coalition of organizations to confront the unjust conditions in Philadelphia prisons. We are working with allies like Amistad, CAVI, and others to expose the abuse and neglect we discovered in our prison system. Early in the year, we participated in a drive-by rally, at the CFCF Correctional Facility to call out the substantial conditions at the prison. In October, we took part in the Coalition Town Hall on Prison Reform to review the study that conducted by the coalition to critique the prison warden's reply to the results of the study. That was Prison Society who went in and did the study, and then we critiqued it in the town hall. For the past 3 Wednesdays, we have been participating in the Justice Pickets calling for Judge Janice Brinkley to resign from duties for her unjust and inharsh sentences. This year, we intend to push city officials to establish a prison oversight board to address the terrible conditions uncovered, like 23 hours lockdown, lack of medical care, broken facilities, and prison abuse. And we plan to raise awareness of abuses of judges and campaign for a no vote on their retention in the fall election. If you would like to help us with this work, please use this link in the chat below.
Hi, I'm Eileen Poses. I'm a member of the Alliance for Philadelphia Public Schools and a member of the Education Action Committee. Education is the foundation of our future, and while we have some of the finest educators in Philadelphia, I am saddened by their lack of resources for students and teachers. All Philadelphia students deserve to learn in a safe, toxic-free school. In 2022, PNN took action. We partnered with Philly Bolt to provide educational workshops for students on how student government works. In fact, we just had a workshop yesterday, and on Thursday, we'll be taking the students on a field trip to visit Council Member Kendra Brooks and DA Larry Krasner. We stood with students to establish a Board of Education policy to assure that students get registered to vote as soon as they are eligible. We partnered with Philly Youth Vote and other allies to highlight the importance of voting, in particular by students who are underrepresented in the electorate. We used our Germantown radio show to talk with experts on what needs to be done to improve the school board. This year, we plan to work to improve the literacy skills of our students by calling for the full funding of school libraries with certified school librarians, which studies show will reduce crime and increase reading levels. Of the 150 district-run public schools, only 4 have full-time librarians. We'll also work with activists to testify at board meetings, participate in actions, and send in letters of support, and we'll continue to work with allies to help increase student voting. At the state level, we will fight to assure that Pennsylvania regulates the charter school industry in a fashion commensurate with other states in the union, and that private schools funded by the Commonwealth provide an account of the identity and academic progress of those students receiving public money. If you'd like to be a part of this work, then use the link in the chat to sign up. Now here's Gail to tell us about housing justice. Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. Good afternoon. I'm Gail Loney, a founding member of Stadium Stompers and chair of PNN's Housing Justice Action Committee. We believe that everyone has the right to a safe and affordable place to live. We know that housing is a chronic issue nationwide, and last year we took on some of those issues that are important to our city. We participated in the People's Economic Forum's housing presentation to show the racial disparities in home ownership and the ongoing threats to housing affordability. We also supported rent stabilization and the expansion of the good cause legislation, as well as the whole home repair legislation to help maintain our homes, to keep housing stable, livable, and affordable, while inviting Senator Nakil Saval to dig into the legislation with our members. In 2023, we plan to work with RCOs and block captains. We want to put applications for programs into the hands of those who need it most. This is where the rubber meets the road. Lack of information and accessibility are the barriers that keep individuals locked out of the housing process and will make a difference in rebuilding our communities. We also intend to organize with Senator Saval to expand home repair and dollar house programs, especially in the 57 most vulnerable blocks in the city, and prioritize our city's longtime residents over developers. If you'd like to be a part of this work, please click on the link in the chat and let us know. Now, here's Hillary to tell us about environmental work. Thank you.
Just get stuff on the screen. Hi, I'm Hillary Baum, and I am one of the team leaders of the Environment Action Committee. We've had a busy year working to protect the environment with a specific focus on linking climate change to reducing waste in our city and making the environment a voting issue in the elections on a state and local level. We co-host an occasional podcast series with our friends at Weaver's Way Plastic Reduction Task Force called Philly Talks Trash, where we talk with experts and entrepreneurs about local solutions to environmental issues. Our program archive is accessible on the PNN YouTube channel. We're also developing a quarterly communication on this topic right now. Our Net Zero Community Education Project has helped our neighbors learn what they can do to reduce climate risk and increase resilience by producing materials and presentations to help other groups spread the word. And we'll continue to focus climate education as we head into our collective work on the upcoming elections. We continue our lobbying and education of city council members to support the BYO bag bill, which will add a 15-cent fee to paper bags. There'll be a city council hearing on this bill coming up, and the bill will be introduced in May after the primaries. And lastly, and probably most current, we are working with Waste Free Philly, a coalition of environmental groups, to press the mayoral candidates to adopt a comprehensive platform on waste, addressing waste collection, recycling, single-use plastics, and the circular economy, source reduction, and illegal dumping in Philadelphia. So please join us. You can use the link in the chat to let us know that you're interested, and we will definitely get back to you. Thank you so much. Oh, and now to Walter.
Well, thank you, Hillary. Hi, I'm Dr. Walter Tsu. I'm the former health commissioner for the city and a longtime member of Philly Neighborhood Network Steering Committee. Well, I don't need to tell you how important healthcare is to all of us. That's why we need to do all we can to improve healthcare here in our city. This past year, we brought to attention a number of healthcare issues. Our Healthcare Action Committee put together 2 Germantown radio shows that looked at the state of healthcare in the United States and what can be done to stop the privatization, especially the new corporatization of primary care through the Medicare program. We hosted a movie night on protecting abortion rights and another on how Medicare played a key role in the civil rights movement that's unknown by most Americans, and how Medicare was used as a tool to advance civil rights in this country. We followed both movies with an open discussion with experts on these subjects. In 2023, we will include advocating for a desperately needed clinic in Northeast Philadelphia and alert the public about the ongoing scheme to privatize Medicare, including the corporatization, as I mentioned, of primary care. And we will be calling upon all our members of Congress, and in particular, Dwight Evans, who comes from the bluest dot in America, who does not support the Medicare for All legislation, to my great disappointment. He needs to get on board. If you'd like to take part in this work, please use this link in the chat to let us know. And now I'm turning it back to Elena.
As you can see, Philly Neighborhood Networks is living our values through our action committees. But that's not the only place our work gets done. Here to tell you more is Tanya Ba.
Hi, I'm T-Ba, the Executive Director of Frida Ballot and Executive Committee Member for Philadelphia Neighborhood Networks. And there's no way we're not going to mention the horrific, senseless murder of another Black man at the hands of abusers disguised as authorities for police protection. Tyree Nichols was first beaten by police on Saturday, January the 7th, and then he died from those injuries 3 days later, which was Tuesday, January the 10th in Memphis, Tennessee. Philadelphia must work to end qualified immunity, and the exploitation of Black and brown pain and trauma must be addressed. Some ways that you can join us and help with all of this in Philadelphia is direct action and community service. Service in ways that benefit all of us. We've worked with Haitian American organizers to register new voters at their churches under the banner of One Voice. We worked at high schools and street fairs, events to register new voters and recruit new members. We also held our first toy drive orchestrated by JT and provided hundreds of toys to children with an incarcerated parent or other needy children. And it will become an annual project. But in 2023, we intend to expand our commitment, and that's to the most vulnerable communities, to bring resources and services where we can. To mental health resources, block cleanup, street parties, community days, toy drives, and more. If you want to be involved in this work, let us know by filling out the form in the chat. Now here's Bo to talk about activism in the streets.
Thanks so much, T. Folks, I'm Bo Dierenbach, a longtime member of the Neighborhood Network Steering Committee. So looking back, in 2022, we took to the streets to save our state and nation from far-right radicals. We worked with Public Citizen to host a watch party for the first of the January 6th hearings, and we received national coverage on NPR radio. We worked with Councilmember Kendra Brooks to introduce a democracy resolution that unanimously passed in City Council. We rallied at Dilworth Plaza with Kendra, Councilmember Jamie Gauthier, and Larry Krasner to call attention to the ongoing Republican efforts to overturn our democracy. We worked with Indivisible Philadelphia and other allies to conduct the massive January 6th rush hour rally at City Hall that was seen by thousands of people heading home for the evening. When Dr. Oz tried to peddle his political snake oil in Germantown, we showed up to give him an appropriate Philly or gritty welcome. In 2023, we're going to keep up the pressure until the treasonous planners of the January 6th coup are brought to justice. We'll also be working with our allies at March on Harrisburg to hold our new state government to account. We're going to work to pass a gift ban to stop lobbyists from bribing our legislators, which they can do right now. We're backing ranked choice voting, and we'll also work with our allies from the Poor People's Campaign. We'll be busy backing Helen Gim for mayor and our progressive candidates for city council. And let's not forget the great get-togethers we have this year. In August, 80 people showed up at the home of our organizing director, Tim, for a great summer soiree where we hosted our first Beanbag Championship, not to be missed, and featured appearances by Larry Krasner, Kendra Brooks, and a handful of city council candidates. A few weeks ago, we had our volunteers potluck appreciation party at Summit Church, where we had a great time with good food and a few rounds of political bingo. You can expect more fun events this year. Thanks for your attention. And now back to Elena.
Thank you. I also want to mention that we developed a robust social media presence in 2022, and you can help us expand it in the new year. To talk about our successes and what we have planned, please welcome our social media coordinator, Jasmine Hanna.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jasmine, and I'm the social media coordinator. This year, we've launched several different programs recorded on Zoom, aired on Germantown Radio, and published on our YouTube channel. We've partnered in posting 11 videos for Financing Philadelphia's Future with the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition. We've posted several Philly Talks Trash videos in partnership with Weaver's Way Co-op. And we've established our first program specifically made for Germantown Radio, completely made by PNN members, Talking in the Neighborhood, hosted by Tim Brown. We've also published all sorts of other programming like movie nights and other action committee-based discussions that you've heard about today. All of this averaging about 2 programs published per month, archived on our YouTube channel, and sometimes aired on the radio. And all of the events that you've heard about have been promoted on our social media. We've gained over 100 followers on Facebook and united our Facebook page with our Facebook group, which is a more collaborative platform with over 1,100 members. We surpassed 1,000 followers on Instagram this year, which we only created 2 years ago, and plan to reach 2,500 followers in the coming year. We've reached similar progress on Twitter and engaged directly with supporters, new voters, and politicians through Twitter. And our YouTube has been gaining traffic, not just in subscribers, but in new interested viewers of our programming as well. We're excited and grateful for this online support, which has inspired the new volunteer appreciation spotlight that we'll be creating this year. We'll be spotlighting our volunteers on social media and thanking them for all the great work that they do, which we're really excited about. And we're returning to articles and text media as we revamp the blog page on our website to include content like the Philly Talks Trash quarterly newsletter. So if you're interested in photographing, videotaping, writing, posting, any of those things online, feel free to reach out. It's fun, it's energetic, it's engaging, and it's growing every year. So stay tuned. You can find us by searching Philly Neighborhood Networks on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube. And now I'm going to pass it back to Tim to talk about our partners.
Great. Thanks, Jasmine. And thanks to our presenters this afternoon for telling us about all the good work that's being done by our members and our plans for the new year. I want to thank our partners, Movement Voter Project, America Votes, and Public Citizen for providing us with much needed funding and resources to keep us going. I also want to take a moment to thank our partners who stood with us at rallies, marches, actions, and events this year. Clean Water Action, Northwest Philly Climate Action Network, Free the Ballot, Philly Bolt, Germantown Radio, Weaver's Way, Stadium Stompers, Open Wards, PA Youth Vote, and Working Families Party. as well as our new friends from River Wards Area Democrats, Abolitionist Law Center, Indivisible Philly, March on Harrisburg, and progressives in the far Northeast. If you have a passion about an issue, if you've participated in events or actions in the past, if you have a good idea you'd like to share, then click on the link in the chat and take a moment to tell us about it. So you've seen all the good trouble that Philly Neighborhood Networks has gotten into so far in today's all hands meeting. Keeping an organization like ours running takes a lot of work, and much of it comes from the dedication of many of you who are here at the meeting today. You've knocked doors, you've made calls, you've taken part in actions, you've helped us plan events, and we thank you for that. But volunteerism cannot do it alone. In order for our organization to flourish, we need a team of professional organizers to lead the planning, run the workshops, take on all the day-to-day tasks that keep PNN running. And we give them our thanks. But I'm sure you've heard the saying, thanks don't pay the bills. So we count on your generosity to help us keep the lights on. Now, some of you have already donated to PNN, and we thank you. Some of you have become monthly sustainers. We thank you. We're still far from meeting our fundraising goals this year for what will be a consequential year in City Hall. So please think about what you really feel comfortable about giving, and then give a little bit more. The link to the donate chat is in the chat now. So please take a moment to click on it so you can donate. And now back to Gloria.
Thank you, organizing team, for highlighting some of the great work that we did last year and to let us know what we have coming up this year for our action committees and community service. Of course, our issue work goes hand in hand with our electoral work, because it's a lot easier to get things done when we have elected officials who share our same values. That's why we have a robust endorsement process that helps us make informed decisions about candidates. To talk about our endorsement process, please welcome the Executive Director of One Pennsylvania and PNN Steering Committee member, Steve Paul.
Thanks, Gloria. So the 2023 citywide races presents a significant opportunity to highlight the political differences between our movement, the movement we've built over the last few decades, and truthfully, against those who seek to take us back to a time of mass incarceration and unchecked corporate greed. PNN, as you heard, has been working towards this moment that we are in right now in these citywide elections for the last 17 years, honestly, right? Organizing, electing progressive candidates at all levels of government. For 17 years, PNN has been working on behalf of our endorsed candidates, knocking on doors, making phone calls, building community power by fighting together on the issues that matter to us, and spreading our message, changing hearts and minds. The work we do, the work that you all do together is important, and it puts the right people and our allies in office. But it also supports them while they're in office to push for policies that put people over profit and put planet over corporate greed. So once again, we have to decide who we are going to be electing to office. As Gloria mentioned, that's where our endorsement process comes in. So a little bit about the process. The first step is to reach out to all declared candidates and offer them an opportunity to fill out our very detailed questionnaire, which you can find on our website at phillynn.org, or someone could pipe it in the chat. But if you want to get access to our questionnaire, definitely go online to phillynn.org. And then our steering committee members invite all of our members to read those questionnaires. We also invite you all to take part in interviewing these candidates. We just finished that process this week by interviewing at-large candidates, as well as some district candidates in contended races. Just to be clear, we measure candidates on 4 categories. We are a movement group, but we definitely take viability seriously, right? So how much money has this person raised? What does their campaign infrastructure look like? And what other support are they getting? Second, we ask for their priorities. What are their top issues, and are their values aligned with us and our members and our work? And then third, where do they stand in those issues? And fourth, and finally, what is their experience before seeking to run for office. At the end of the interview process, steering committee members meet to decide who they will recommend to you all, our members. You, our members in good standing, then have a chance to vote on which candidates that Philly Neighborhood Network should endorse for this upcoming cycle. This process takes place every primary and every election cycle. It helps to inform our decision on who we will be supporting with all of that great work that Tim and other folks were just mentioning. Specifically, our canvassing program and our volunteer canvassing program. I just want to mention we had one exception to this rule this cycle. As you all heard at the beginning of the program, we decided to endorse Councilmember Helen Gim for mayor, but we didn't do that in a vacuum. 98% of our members voted to approve this process to endorse Helen Gim early. So congratulations to you all. We believe that candidates will seek to stand out through their stance on issues like gun violence, cost of living, affordable housing, development, some of the things that the councilwoman mentioned earlier. But like, we are clear that Councilmember Gim is the most progressive candidate in the mayoral race, and one that is closely aligned to our work and have built a deep relationship with us and our members through issue organizing and the work that she has done in council. The councilwoman has been a fighter, and we suspect she will be a fighter for working families as mayor. Elections have consequences. And so hopefully you are all ready to get to work to elect Councilwoman Helen Gim. As demonstrated this past election, when we retook the State House for this first time in decades, our hard work finally paid off. And now to talk a little bit more about what is possible in Harrisburg because of the work we've been putting in for the last couple of years, the last decades, please welcome State Representative Chris Rabb.
Hey folks, Rep Rabb here. It's good to see all of you. It's always wonderful, in fact. A lot of you are my neighbors, and more importantly, I would not be Rep Rabb if it weren't for Neighborhood Networks, quite frankly. You're one of the rare organizations that stood up for me, that supported me when everyone thought I couldn't make it. It's always a pleasure to be back in front of you and with you, shoulder to shoulder in this movement. Steve is right. We are on the precipice of taking back the House. I say precipice because it has not yet happened, even though on election day, Democratic candidates won 102 out of 203 seats. 3 of our members were not there to be sworn in on inauguration day. 1 due to the untimely death of my colleague, Anthony DeLuca, and 2, who I'm happy to say have gone on to a higher office. Austin Davis is our new lieutenant governor, and my hardcore progressive comrade, Summer Lee, is in Congress. So as a result of that, there are only 99 Dems presently and 101 Republicans. On February 7th, there will be 3 special elections, all in Allegheny County. Based on everything that I've heard, there is a very good chance that all of those seats will be filled by Democrats, which means that when those special election results are certified sometime after February 7th, those folks will be sworn in, and we will have a new Democratic majority, first time, I believe, in 12 years. But the bigger picture is for really the lion's share of 30 years, there's been authoritarian control of the House. That Republican control most recently has fallen into hands of fascists. The good news is that there's extraordinary implosion in the House Republican caucus between conservatives and fascists. How do you tell apart a conservative these days from a fascist? Well, given I see a lot of interesting facial expressions when I pose that question, I'm going to tell you the easiest way for me to determine the two who are really combating each other, which benefits us strategically as progressives. Conservatives are those folks who voted for Trump. Fascists are those folks who love Trump. All right, so it may seem like a small nuance, it is not. They had enough votes on Inauguration Day to appoint a Republican speaker, which is what I anticipated. There was so much dissent within the Republican ranks that they could not do it, and they had 2 months to plan, and they still couldn't do it. There, for the past at least 2 years, has been extraordinary animosity and fighting within the House Republican caucus, and they're supposed to be in leadership. Now we have the opportunity to come together as Democrats, House Democrats, and actually lead once we're in the majority. So there's a difference between being in the majority and actually knowing how to lead. Now, I know who I'm talking to on this call, and we don't just want to get a new majority so that we can do the same old nonsense. We want to have a progressive agenda. Most of my colleagues are not progressives, but there is a larger percentage, a much larger subset of my colleagues who are indeed progressive, who share our values. It is up to us as that strong, robust subset of Democrats to demand progressive change in whatever the Democratic agenda will be in Harrisburg, knowing that there is a Republican-controlled Senate and a corporate Democrat in the governor's office. Yeah, I said it. There's nothing I'm going to say about Governor Shapiro that I haven't said to his face. So we have a corporate Dem in the governor's office. That is a fact. The good news is he is highly transactional. So if we can make a deal to do things that move our progressive agenda forward, he's going to be down. Just as a point of reference, when he was Attorney General, he helped me get the police misconduct database passed into law by getting FOP to support the bill. Ultimately, it was diluted by those very same people, but we can have another bite at that apple. But I say all this to say that we are in a much better position than we've ever been. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be guaranteed success, but we know the history of social movements. Ultimately, it's entirely up to us collectively to organize, to agitate, to raise hell, and move us in the right direction. And we can't do that without neighborhood networks and the broader coalition of organizations that have done so much work over the past few years. I want to mention quickly that there is a listening tour that the current speaker, Mark Rozzi, Democrat, not what corporate media tells you. He is a Democrat, a lifelong Democrat, and has not changed his party affiliation. I do not anticipate that he will. He has sought to have a listening tour across the Commonwealth to listen to the concerns of survivors of sexual abuse at the hands of priests and others. He himself is a survivor. It is the reason he ran for office 10 years ago. His best friend killed himself dealing with the trauma of being raped by his priest. This is very close and personal to him, and it should be a priority for all of us. We're talking about the most vulnerable Pennsylvanians, children who are now adults who have never had the ability to go after the folks who caused so much trauma in their lives. So this is a priority for him, and it should be a priority for the legislature, and there are other priorities too. But before I mention what those priorities are and take whatever questions you have specifically around legislation or anything else, is the listening tour has included people who have spoken up, as many of you have, about the House rules. Because regardless of who's in power, if the people who claim to lead have rules that do not respect the role of folks like me who are rank and file members. What is a rank and file member? That is someone who is not serving in leadership or someone who is a chair of a standing committee. So while you may like me and think I do good things, I am a foot soldier in the House Democratic Caucus with no fancy title, which means that I do not have the same influence as those Democrats who have more seniority, but we have collective strength. And now for the first time in a long time, Democrats are talking about, Democratic leadership is talking about being open to changing the House rules. And after February 7th, when we get the majority, It's not just good that Democrats are in power, it's what we do collectively with that power. And if we have equitable House rules that promote accountability and transparency, so all of you can have access to the bills before they're run, you can actually read them and reach out to your state rep and say, I don't like this, or I love this, or how can I help? We are the least productive full-time state legislature in the country. In fact, we're probably the least productive state legislature, period, even though we're the largest and we are the third best paid in terms of salaries. So I say all that to say that process matters, the institution itself matters. So I'm not actually here as a Democrat. I'm here as a progressive. And we have to make sure that whomever is in power is accountable to the people, and the House rules, amending them fairly is the only right thing to do. And I'm going to need your help because I'm one of those consistently vocal members who say good governance and progressivism is like a hand in a glove. You can't talk about one without talking about the other. All right. So before I go on and on, I'm going to pass it back, and I guess I'm going to take some questions.
Yep. Thanks for those remarks, Chris. We'll pass it back to Elena, the chat monitor, for questions.
Thanks. Excellent. So one of the questions here is there a way, once you get the majority, to pressure the still Republican controlled Senate to move good legislation?
You have more influence on the Republican controlled Senate than I do. By showing up, by scaring the bejesus out of them, going to hearings, having rallies, and also finding your colleagues. Some of you may be in Philly or wherever, but you may have family members who unfortunately are represented by some of these conservatives, and getting them to come out and say, hey, I'm your constituent and I care about these issues. So you're already doing it as neighborhood networks. You're finding common cause with other organizations that have other footprints that complement your work. I know like Power Interfaith is across like 11 counties now, finding folks who are in clergy. I find the conservatives listen to clergy and seniors and veterans and business owners. So I've had particular success when I've had clergy come to visit me. I can go to the House floor and find the most conservative Republican, and I can say, hey, Rep, there's a pastor out here who'd like to meet you. And you know what? They never say no. And then you do what you do. Or a farmer, they're never going to turn down a farmer. So there are folks who we can bring strategically to the Senate that will get the attention of Republican senators in ways that a progressive Black guy from Philly is not going to be able to do. All right, so I'm just being real, but I've had success with this before and happy to work with you on strategies to do that. Oh, I see farm workers. Yeah, farm workers, not so much, particularly if they're brown. You're not going to reach any conservatives bringing brown folk or Black folk, just being honest, unless they're conservative. Now, if you have them, if the farm workers lead with faith and say, as a devout Catholic, ... maybe, just being honest. There's some racism, it is awful. I work with a guy who walks with spurs. We know who we're talking about. This is my reality.
I feel like you, Rep. Rabb, are very compelling and really good at explaining why process is important, but how would you recommend to those of us who, are trying to talk to our friends about this really complex issue and can get a little wonky? What are some recommendations you have for how to bring the importance of this to other people in Philly?
So Fair Districts PA created this great PDF called, Dysfunction by Design? And one of the key talking points is that really 6 people decide what happens in the largest legislative body, full-time legislative body in the country, 253 people. And basically there are committee chairs who can say, I don't like you because you're from Philly, or you're a woman, or you're Black, or a Democrat, so I'm not going to run anything by you. In fact, many Republicans don't get their bills run just because of the capriciousness and pettiness of a given majority chair, all of whom in the majority are Republicans. So just saying we need to change the rules so that one person can't be the bottleneck on things that millions of people care about. So you can reference any kind of legitimate poll that talks about reproductive rights or climate action or voting rights, and you'll see that irrespective of party, there's a large majority that supports that. And you can say there are bills that have gotten Democratic and Republican support that have not seen the light of day, particularly the Fairness Act, which has been one of those bills that have had one of the largest cohorts of co-sponsors from both sides of the aisle that would end the second-class citizenship of our queer brothers and sisters and non-binary folk. That bill has not come up, not because there isn't support across the aisle, but because of one person who will not allow that bill to be run in their committee. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is bringing me back with other folks who you trust in Harrisburg, and we can do a webinar, or we can do something in person in Harrisburg and Philly, wherever I'll go, and we can actually do role playing. I've done that before with I forget the organization, and it was very powerful experience for them because they actually got to feel firsthand what it would be like to lobby a legislator. And I do it really well because I have an improv background and I work with these knuckleheads. So please use me. I'm happy to do it. And frankly, helping you do that helps me do my job. So it goes both ways, folks. I'm on speed dial for that, and I will bring others to help from Harrisburg who you trust. So let's make that a priority if that's something you want to do.
Wonderful. And then just a final question, which, I'm only giving you a minute to answer a really complex question, but is there any starting point in the state legislature on the questioner asked for sensible gun legislation or really any gun legislation?
Oh gosh, yeah, Bo just put knuckleheads. Maybe something playing around the edges. Playing around the edges. It could be red flag, ERPO, maybe lost and stolen firearms. I'm working on something that I think, but it comes close to optimism. And those of you who know me, I'm allergic to optimism, but I'll just throw it out there. It's a gun dealer inspection bill that basically says gun dealers who are around cities who have business models that are exploitative, that sell cheap handguns, not rifles, but handguns that get involved in homicides, can be inspected based on laws that are already on the books. And we know our conservative Second Amendment lovers, or as Brian Sims used to say, ammo-sexuals, who love ammo more than they love, human rights and the safety of children, that you can just enforce the laws on the books by providing resources to the people who have the authority to inspect those bad faith gun dealers. And there is proof, and I've been working with the district attorney's office around this legislation to document that if you inspect the bad gun dealers around Philly and other urban centers, you can actually reduce the homicide rate, because those business models are based on straw men buying guns and giving them or selling them to the bad guys that end up in the homicides we see about every day.
Thanks, Rep. Rabb, and Elena and Steve for that Q&A. Now, let's talk about our electoral work and what we plan to do in 2023 and how you can get involved. So let's return to our organizing director for that, Tim Brown.
Thanks, Gloria. We had a busy year in the field in 2022. We worked as part of a broad coalition of organizations to protect our democracy from the onslaught of fascism. We phone banked, we knocked 15,000 doors, including 1,000 on election day, handing out flyers, having conversations with our neighbors about how important it is to put progressives in office. And that work included canvassing and phone banks in areas where we found great new partners, like in the River Wards in far northeast Philadelphia, as well as outside our city to help candidates in new swing districts where we had a fighting chance to take back seats held by Republicans for far too long. And it worked. We took back the State House of Representatives for the first time in a decade since the GOP gerrymandered it back in 2011. And I'm happy to report, as you already know, We kept the governorship. We elected the first Black lieutenant governor in Austin Davis, and we won back a Senate seat with the election of John Fetterman. We were also able to beat back an attempt to thwart the will of Philadelphia voters who, by pressuring wavering Democrats in the House to stand with District Attorney Larry Krasner as House Republicans impeached him on trumped-up charges. Now we turn to the work of giving our city a more forward-thinking leadership by electing a progressive Democrat for mayor, who will be supported by progressive city council members. Now, you have an opportunity to help with this work by taking part in canvassing, phone banking, collecting signatures. And with so many people throwing their hats into the ring for these seats, it's important for us to be strategic in our work. We want to make sure that we all get behind a common slate of candidates and not split our votes like we did the last 4 years, allowing the old guard to sneak into office. And we'll talk more about that work as we meet in a group next month to discuss our election strategy. There's also work you can do outside of Philly on elections that have big consequences for all of us. To talk about that work is Blue Pennsylvania founder and PNN Steering Committee member Coleman Poses.
Thanks, Tim. Hi, I'm Coleman Poses of the Blue Pennsylvania Committee of Philly Neighborhood Networks. Since 2016, the Blue Pennsylvania Committee has been at the vanguard of a drive to move the state from red to blue on the political spectrum. You can see by the table that our efforts have been worthwhile. Successes in every legislative race in the Commonwealth have resulted in Democratic majorities in 3 of the 4 state and federal houses. And for the first time ever, Pennsylvania will have 2 Democrats in the US Senate at the same time. While all of this is good news, we still have work to do. In the coming months, we will be faced with the challenges of the culture wars returning to the election circuit, with many conservative school board candidates campaigning to ban books, flags, and free speech. School board members have often succumbed to, school board members have often succeeded in attaining high state and federal office. So it is incumbent upon all of us to help our neighbors to elect school boards that reflect the values of most Americans. And we cannot allow the party which has manifested criminal behavior again and again to promote themselves as the guardians of public safety. Finally, while it is wonderful that a Democrat still occupies the governor's seat, we need to keep pressure on Josh Shapiro so that he will not sacrifice our efforts to establish a clean environment and an effective system of public education to outside interests in the name of bipartisanship. If you are interested in receiving updates from the Blue Pennsylvania Committee, please let us know by using the link in the chat. And now back to Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Coleman. So politics is about passions. It's how we get things done. It's why things get done. And my goal as organizing director is to connect you with all the people who share your political passion so that working as a team, we can get things done together using direct action to call decision makers to account. It's what John Lewis used to call good trouble. So please take a moment right now to click on the link in the chat and tell us what's your passion.
You're
still on.
Thanks to everyone who helped put today's event together, especially Tim Brown. And thank you for attending. As you've seen today, there's a lot of work that we need to get done in 2023, connecting with our neighbors, building trust, and working together on shared issues, and encouraging the disenfranchised to participate in the democracy. If you've come to this meeting, you know what's at stake, and you know that now's the time to sign up and get involved. Please take the time to look in the chat and click on the link to tell us what your passion is, how you want to contribute, and we will always welcome your donation to help fund our work. Be on the lookout for a follow-up email from us. It will include our speakers' answers to any questions you asked that did not get answered today, as well as details on upcoming events and our election calendar. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you at our next event.